Hi guys, it's Amy from Chapcakes Decor and welcome to today's tutorial on how to make a Gumpaste moth orchid like a pro. I've also broken this video down into a few easy parts for you to follow along with, but before we begin, please print out the materials list attached to this video and have everything on hand ready to go before we begin. Part 1, we are going to make the pistil and the throat. Take some of your fondant, about a golf ball size if not less, and add a good dash of Tylose powder to this. This will make your fondant dry hard like gum paste, or if you prefer to use gum paste, knead it and get it activated. I prefer to use this way because it doesn't harden out on me quicker, or as quickly as what gum paste does, and it's a lot easier on the joints and the fingers to knead through. So make sure you knead it through. Now we're going to roll our gum paste out on our foam board, and we're going to insert our fondant into the biggest hole. You can go the next one down if your cutter will allow it, and you need to take out of your moth cutters, the middle is the throat. So this funny looking shaped cutter is the one that we'll be making the throat and the pistil from. So once you've kneaded it, give it a good hard press. Take your cornflour pouch and give it a light dusting. Icing sugar is not preferred. If you can get away with it, use corn flour. Icing sugar absorbs into your fondant and it makes it dry and crack quicker. So I'm giving this a nice little roll out. It's quite thin. I'm going to flip it onto the other side so the little sausage or the nibby bit here is poking up. Now what I'm going to do is that this little section of my cutter is going to fit over that little sausage, and I'm going to push down and cut my throat. Using a tool to help you push out your throat, your petal. So now that we've done that, I'd just like to lengthen this our little sausage. Just give it a little thin out and a little lengthen. And right on the tip, I can use pliers or tweezers or a vining tool. I'm going to put a little triangle, almost like like you're drawing a cat. You do the nose and then you do that little cat mouth. Just a little triangle like this, but I'm going to make it quite small, and I'm just going to put it on the tip. Not too far at all. And then I'll just push it in. Now we're going to thin and widen our petals. This particular one, I'm going to put my ball tool in the middle of my wing petals, and I'm going to widen them first before I thin those edges. Now that they're widened, I'll come through and thin the edges. And then for the tail, I will drag my ball tool from the middle and drag down with a bit of pressure to lengthen out that tail. I'll then come through and thin those edges. Now that that's done, we're going to take our scissors and we're going to tidy up the tail. So I like to come from the point of the tail and sort of bow towards the center. So this is my center here, this is where I'm going to stop. And I'll put a little curve in my tail and then come back and do the same for this one. Now I'm just tidying up my tails so that they look like long triangles. Now for this section, I want to take my ball tool in the palm of my hand and I want to cup these wing petals so that they naturally cup inwards. And we'll move on to the next section. Taking our piece of foil, I'm going to fashion myself a little cup. So I'll literally just make a donut with my hand and I'll press my thumb down into that to give it a bit more of a cup shape, and I'll put that aside. I'll take my 20 gauge wire and my edible glue. With this wire I'm going to dip it into the glue and I'm going to gently insert it into the back of my little pistil, or the sausage as we call it. Because that little pistil is going to come forward somewhat, I want to be careful how far in I push it and keeping the shape. So I will position my wire and push it about 1/2 centimetre in, and then I'm going to pierce the foil with my wire and let my throat and my pistil fall in. Now here is the tricky part. The tricky part is getting all the petals to fall where I want them to be. The cup looks nice. I'll bend my tails down slightly. Sometimes I'll use my fingers, it just depends which one you're more comfortable with. Okay, so that is looking okay. My wings are cupping slightly towards my pistil and my tails have been curled back slightly. I'm going to put that aside because the next part we need to put a little bit more detail in underneath the pistil. I call this part the tongue. So I'll take a tiny little piece of fondant. This is a ball, it's about 1/2 centimetre in width. You can go smaller if you want to. I just roll it into a ball. It's actually a little bit dry, just to add a tiny little bit of moisture to it. Give it a little roll. This one's not working for me. Give it a little roll and then gently roll it into a sausage. It's still slightly too big. Okay, I hope you can see that. Tiny little sausage. Taking the back of my craft knife, I'm going to press a line from one side to the other, so lengthwise. I'm going to press a line not the whole way through but just somewhat through, and it should look like a little piece of barley. Taking some edible glue, wiping off the excess. This part is important. Get as much off as possible because the more moisture you have on it, the harder it is. Right underneath the pistil, between the wings, I'm going to put a little bit of moisture in there. Using the tip of my craft blade, I'm going to put my little piece of barley and position it in there. Now I'm going to use my veining tool. I'm going to put pressure between the cuts that I've made and push that right in. Somewhat blending those edges in. Now that that's been done, I need to make sure that the shape of my throat now is in its final position. So being that the throat curls forward somewhat, I need to put a little bit more pressure down in the cup of my foil. because I want my pistil to bend over the tongue section. I want my wings to curl up on either side of my pistil, and I want my tails to curve right up. This part's probably the hardest part, is the tails. Trying to bend them so that they curl. Okay, and then push your foil in so that your wings and your tail are positioned and supported on each side, and they will dry in that position. Manipulating these petals is probably the most difficult part of this flower. A lot of people give up. It will take you a lot of practice. I think when I first started, I made about 50 of these and they all looked like crap before I got to the point where I actually had something that looked similar to a real life moth orchid. So here's my little rack. I'll place the cup in the rack with the wire down. Make sure that nothing's moved out of place, and then I'll let that dry. Make as many as you can, always put extras in. I always like to make at least 2 extras because I find that these break very quickly. I've got a little bit of white fondant here. Again, I'm going to add some Tylose to this. You can continue to use yours if it feels fine. I have a lot of moisture in the air where I am at the moment in Victoria, Ballarat, Victoria in Australia. So I need to add a little bit more Tylose than normal. If you have high moisture or you're in a humid climate as well, always add more, because you will find that the moisture in the air will make your petals soft and they will break. Okay, so now that that's done, we're going to roll our fondant out to about 2 millimeters thick. I'll use my cornflour pouch just to dust my fondant so it doesn't stick and it's easier to roll. You can use a cell board for this if you prefer. I just find that using a cell board for this with my technique of thinning and widening the petals doesn't really work, because we're going to cut out 2 of the wing petals and we're going to add some wire into them. So I'll just work on 1 petal at a time. I will put some cornflour on my forefinger and my thumb, and I'm going to pinch and roll the petal between my fingers. But this section here where the wire will fit, I'm going to leave that about 1 centimetre from that tip and only pinch and roll the edges on the other side of it. Now I'll take my 24 gauge wire, add a little bit of gum paste and insert it about 1/2 centimetre in, and give that little join a nice beautiful little pinch, and make sure it's tapered quite nicely, because if it's an ugly join, you will see it when your flower is finished. I'm going to add my petal very gently to my veiner. And this section where the wire is, I will not put any pressure over the top of it. I'll only put pressure to the edges. Now that we've removed it, we're going to flip the petal over so that you can see that ridge. And we're going to dry this petal on our spoons. So I will place this petal into one of my spoons, probably towards the end. I will place it down and I'll just curve those edges over very slightly over the end of the spoon, not too much, because when it starts to dry it'll start to slide down, and I don't particularly want too much of a curl for this one. I just want that tip to be prominent. And set that aside and let it dry overnight. I'll move on to the second wing petal and walk you through this one again, as just in case you've missed a section. Rolling my fondant out to about 2 millimeters thick. Cutting my petal. Using the cornflour on my forefinger and my thumb, I'm going to widen and thin the edges. As you get better at making your petals, you will soon learn how to make them all the same size, and you may learn that you need it to be in a different shape. I'm inserting my wire, my 24 gauge wire, and now I'm going to put my petal in my veiner, and I'm only going to push those edges. I'll flip the petal upside down so that that ridge is upwards, and now I will place it into my spoons. Just a tiny little bit overhanging, not much at all. And put that aside for 24 hours. Make an extra one just in case you break it. So now we're going to move on to our 3 triangle petals. I'm rolling out my gum paste to 2 millimeters thick, and I'm going to take my long petal cutter, and I'll cut 3 of these petals, but I'll only start, this first one is the top one, and I'll start this one on its own, mainly because this particular petal being at the top, I want it to be wider. So using the cornflour between my thumb and my forefinger, I'm going to start thin and widening these petals 1 centimetre from the tip or the base, and I'll just widen these out. I will go past maybe 2 or 3 runs. I'm not trying to lengthen, I'm just trying to widen that top part out more than anything, because that's the part that will be seen above the wings. So you can see how much I've widened it. I'll take a 24 gauge wire, put a little bit too much gum paste on that, just wipe any excess off, insert it 1/2 centimetre in, and then I'll place it on my hand, and I'm just going to cup this top part of the petal. You can do this on a sponge if you want. You can vein this petal if you want. I just prefer on my moth orchids not to vein these petals. I find that veining the wing petals has a better effect. And I'll place that petal cup side up and let it dry in the spoon. Now moving on to the other 2 bottom petals. Again, I'll take my gum paste, roll out my gum paste to 2 millimeters thick. This particular section I will cut both petals together because they are both needing to be somewhat the same or similar. I'm going to thin and widen them the same as I did the previous petal, but this time I'm not going to widen them as fat or as wide. I'm going to lengthen slightly, but not too much. Taking the 24 gauge wire, I'll insert 1/2 centimetre in and taper down, and do the same for the other one, wiping off any excess. And then I will place the petal in my palm and give it a little bit of a cupping. And now gently I will place these in the spoons so that they dry with the cup facing upwards. Let that dry for 24 hours before we move on to the next section. We're going to take our gum paste and we're going to pull out 3 buds or 3 balls. So one will be quite large, one will be in the middle, and one will be quite small. Just give all your little balls of fondant or gum paste a roll, just so you can easily see. They can be any size you like, but ideally you want one to be 1/2 inch, or one to be 3/4 of an inch, 1/2 inch, and about 1 centimetre. Taking the big one first, it doesn't matter, just eyeball it. They're not going to worry if they're not the same size. I'm just giving you a reference. So I've rolled my first one into a ball and I'm going to make a cone shape. I'm going to take my 20 gauge wire and my needle nose pliers, and about 1/2 centimetre down from the wire I'm going to hold on to it with my pliers, bend and turn the wire around at the same time. I'll do that for all my wires. This just helps the fondant stay in place because it has a little bit more weight to it. As it dries, you'll find that it won't swirl or twirl off the end. So dipping your little loop and tail into your edible gum paste, wipe off any excess and insert into the base and just lightly pinch and tape down that end. Now these buds need to be quite short and stout. And now we're going to vein in some petals. So I use the back of my crafting knife, but you can use the veining tool if you prefer to, or any knife that you've got lying around. I will support the tip with my forefinger and I'm going to start from the bottom, press in, drag up and then imprint the top. And I will turn it around and I'll do 3 evenly spaced lines for this. And then once I'm finished, I'll just tidy up that tip in my foam board to dry. And I'll set that aside until I have all the buds that I need. I'll do another one. I'll do these 3. But I generally will make quite a few of them. So I'm pinching the top and pushing the base down so it's like a little teardrop or a little button. Put my loop into some edible glue and wipe off the excess and insert into the base about halfway and pinch and taper that bottom down. And now I'll add my 3 lines. Pinch that top, push it down, put it aside. This is my little baby bud. Bit tricky the smaller the buds get, but it will still work. Okay. Now after you've made all your buds, put them all aside and let them dry with your throats, your centerpieces, and all of your petals. Let them dry for 24 hours. If you do live in a climate that has a lot of moisture in the air or humidity, put them in your oven without the heat on. Don't turn the heat on, but turn the light on. The halogen light has enough heat in it to absorb all the moisture, and it will dry your fondant quicker so that you can get away with assembling it the next day. But again, do not put heat on it or they will melt. So now we will colour the centerpiece for our moth orchid, and to do that I'll show you how to do it. So I take a piece of paper with 3 colours. I have green, pink and yellow. I have my brushes and my little brown edible marker. So I'll take out my pistol or my centerpiece, and what I want to do is first take the marker pen and I want to put some spots just on the center wings coming out from that little middle split pea. Just a few spots. Really lightly. We're going to put some spots on either side of the split pea in the wings. And once we've done that, we're going to get the green and we're going to go from the outside and dust it inwards in that little crease between the wing and the top of the pants. Being really careful that you don't accidentally cut or smash into those tail bits. And then fan around those dots. Until you get your desired effect. A close up. And now we're going to go in with the yellow. So the yellow is just to highlight those green pieces that we've just put in. So we want to highlight a little bit of the center, but not too much because we're going to go over it with pink. And we're going to just highlight that little crease part and fan upwards. Not too much at all. And now we're going to go in with some pink. Now the pink is the darkest to the middle, where the split pea is. And I kind of dust it in there and then I fan it out. I don't come down the throat, I fan it out towards the wings. To get this to pop in colour, it's best to steam it, and those colours will darken up and they'll really set. But I'm not going to show you that in this video. This one's a quick one. But definitely, if you want those colours to pop, give it a steam, but don't go too close to the steam. You just want to lightly give it a steam and let it dry. So now we're going to colour our buds. Now our buds are going to be white, as is our flowers. And we're going to put some green and fan it from the base upwards to give it a lifelike look. And then we'll take the yellow and place it just at the base to give it that blended look. So I've got some green on my paintbrush and I've dusted off the excess. I'm going from the bottom and I'm brushing upwards. I'm putting most of it in the creases that we've made to give it a bit of definition, and then I'm just blending it into that base section. Now once that's done, I'll move on and do all of them. Now we've done that, we're going to take a little bit of yellow, very minimal bits of yellow, and just do the base. Now I'm cheating here and I'm putting, because I have a lot of yellow on my brush, I'm putting the little dabs of yellow on first until my brush starts to wear out, and then I'll go in and blend it. I'm fanning it from the base upwards very lightly, and I'm just going to continue for the rest of these buds. Now if you've got a little bit too much yellow on there, feel free to go over it with a bit more green, which will inevitably make it a little bit more darker at the base. This is your preference. You don't have to do this. You can leave them all white if you want to, but this just gives it that little bit of natural effect. And when you're making a cake and doing sugar art or flower art, you really want people to go, wow, that looks like it's real. You want to fool people into thinking that these are real flowers. So that's all done. We'll move on to wiring our flowers up next. We have our wing petals to the side. We have our bottom triangle petals and we have our top triangle petal. I have my florist tape ready to go and my pistils, all my centers. So taking our wing petals and holding your forefinger and your thumb at the very base, you're going to bend that wire so it's a 90-degree angle. I'm going to do that for both of them. And then you're going to get your tape. You're going to start on the center wire and you're going to wrap it from the base to the top so that you have a good foundation for your petals to sit to. Now, I like to bring these petals back about 1/2 centimetre or so. So I just need to bring my tape back a little bit. And I'll bring them back about 1/2 centimetre and then I'll tape that on. And I'll just wire it all the way down just so it gives it a nice sturdy grip and it doesn't swing around, because that's the most annoying thing when you're making flowers, is if you're still learning and you try and take more than one flower at a time, the flower will swing around, and once you've finished and you've taped it off, you'll come back and all your petals are all wonky. And although you can move them sometimes they're positioned that you can't move them back. So as you start to learn, just do one petal at a time. And then we'll go for our second petal. Again, it's in line with the first one that I put on, and I'm going to tape the whole way down. So now we've got our 2 wing petals. They should look something like this. We're going to put the top petal on. So this is the top petal, and if you remember, this is the one that's cupped up. So that's the one that's going to face frontwards. And you're going to bend the wire again with your thumb and your forefinger. You're not going to bend it completely to the 90 degrees, but you're going to get pretty close. And you want to bring that up as close as possible. So this petal is actually about 1/2 centimetre back from the first 2 petals. And the reason why I do that is to give it a little bit more depth so that it sits in line with the rest of the petals. You'll see once I've finished, I'll show you what it will look like. Whereas if it was up close, you'd have a gap. I'm going to go all the way down, rip that off, position our petal. So I'm just moving my pistil up slightly. Okay, so that's what it will look like. And now we're going to do the bottom 2. So these are the ones that are going to go on the bottom. We're going to bend the wire to 90 degrees, get our tape ready, because these petals again will come back 1/2 centimetre. And they go on the bottom. And these 2 you probably can get away with doing 2 at a time. these petals are going to be cut downwards. We'll just bend the wire and fit them in underneath. They'll go back about 1/2 centimetre from the last petal that you put in. We'll wind that all the way down to the bottom. Now remember, when you're actually placing these singular petals and putting the flowers straight into the cake, you want to trim this wire and you want the tape to go all the way down, flush off those exposed wires and then come all the way back up, so that your wire is not reacting with the chemicals or ingredients in your cake. So that's one that's been done. We'll put that aside and move on to the next. So now we're going to tape our buds together. We're going to put the smallest one at the top, the bigger ones down the bottom. So I'm going to do a set of 3 and a set of 2 and then add them all together. So taking my smallest one, I'll base this tape right up underneath the bud and twirl it down. Now this bud I'm going to stop. I'm going to take my forefinger and my thumb, bring my thumb down about 1.5 centimetres and use my thumb to bend that wire back slightly, and that's where I'm going to situate these 2 buds and tape them together strongly. The next step is to add the other smaller bud. This time I'm going to stop about 1.5 centimetres down and face it towards the other section. But with this bit, I'm going to give it a little bit of a bow. And I'm going to bring it down about 1 centimetre out from the previous bud. And I'll tape that together. And bring it down. Now that I've got the 3 together, I'm going to add a little bit of flavour or a little bit of styling to the wire. I'm going to put a bend in it and give it a little bit of a bow. Now I like to bow them towards each other, so it sort of creates a little bit of a lifelike effect. Now my 2 big buds are a little bit different. I'm going to put them a little bit closer. I'm going to move them a bit further down with the same principles that I used for the first section. I'll tape that one there. The last bud I'll move out slightly more, but again I'll bring it down. I haven't moved my tape down far enough. And I'll put that on the opposite side. And then I'll tape them all together. Now there's no perfect way to do this, you can do it any way you like. And then I just bow this out so it warps slightly. And then manipulate them to be how you prefer them to be. And I'll put them aside. Now we're going to wire our moth orchids onto the stem. So I have 3 here. I'm going to pick the best 2 and I'm going to wire them. I'm going to use my pliers for this one. I'm going to take them 2 centimetres down, pinch the wire and bend into a 90-degree angle. Put that aside. And do the same for the other one, but slightly closer, and bend. Now if you have a look, I've got one bent to the side and I've got this one bent to the top. That'll determine the way that the flower faces when you put them on here. I didn't have a special knack, I just did it that way. So the first one I'm going to do is the one that has the wire out to the side. I'm going to tape this to the stem. We're going to call it the main stem. Now you need to be really gentle, take your time, be patient, and don't give up. The greatest cake artists didn't wake up one day and go, yep, I'm pro, I can get this all done. They practiced. So now that that's on there, we're going to put the next one on. So place that next to it so you can see how it's going to turn out. Now I can see that I should have bent the wire downwards because it's upside down. So I'll just straighten it and bend that wire downwards. There we go, look at that. It fits perfect. So the general rule of thumb is that the stem points upwards. All the flowers need to be facing upwards. All their tops need to be upwards. Sometimes they can be a little bit towards the center, a little bit to the outside, but an upside down flower on a stem that goes upwards kind of doesn't happen. So if you do that, you're awesome. And you're definitely not being a sheep and following everybody's suit. You're standing out. So I'm going to just take this one at the same intersection. The reason why I'm doing it at the same intersection is because I don't want to go up a little bit higher. Actually, it doesn't want to work. There we go. So it's at the same intersection. And I'm just going to twist it. Now this is messy. It gets hard. The more flowers you put on, the harder it gets, but you will get there. But just remember to tape the tape the whole way down. And so far we have our first two flowers. Our last flower is going to be straight up to the stem, the petals, the buds. And I'm going to put this close to the base. So I'm going to take my wire, put it right up against the base of the wire, and I'm going to bend that wire towards myself so that it's on a stem like this. And then I'll place that just in the little nook where all the other flowers are, and I will tape that to the main stem. Just being careful, making sure that I get that tape right up against the angle of that wire so that that flower doesn't break off or move. And give that tape a nice tight, there we go, and then twist it the whole way down. And if you've got extra, tape it down and bring it back up. Okay, so now that we've got our flowers there, it's time to manipulate them and cover in that gap. So we've got a gap up here. I'm just going to push that flower up. Oops. Yep, there we go. Push her up. Now her petals might be a little bit distraught or disorganized. Just fix them up a bit. Never move the petals. Always use the tweezers to move the actual base stem. So I've got another one here, and we've got, there we go. There we go, put that there. And then we've got the base. Now that I've manipulated them, I'll turn it around. And that is your finished orchid stem. Thank you for watching today's tutorial on how to make a Gumpaste moth orchid like a pro. I love teaching everybody, I love giving you pointers and tips, but I really love seeing the photos that you guys send me of your creations. If you have any questions or any feedback, please feel free to leave it. I also have other tutorials, some are free and some are paid, and you can access them via the website on the link below. See you guys next time.